All right. I just want to welcome Leon to
Hey,
the
happy to be here.
comic
Thanks for
stream.
asking me to come on, bud.
Yeah, yeah. Hey, good to have you. I mean, I really liked watching some of your content there that you put out, and I'm like, you know what? I got to have this guy on the channel. He's all right, you know.
Yeah, no, yeah, thank you. No, much appreciated. There's so much to talk about in nerd culture, whether it be good or bad. So I'm sure we're gonna get into a little bit of both today.
Yeah, yeah. Well, hopefully more good than bad.
Yeah, I hope so as
You
well.
know.
It gets exhausting
Yeah.
talking about negative stuff all the time.
Oh, I hear you. It's just something that just wear on you. Yeah, and I brought you on specifically just to talk comics because you're into the comics. I
I
understand.
am. Yep.
Nice, but you're more of a Marvel fella, aren't you?
Well, between Marvel and DC, I'm definitely more of a Marvel guy. My favorite comic run or comic series of all time, and this is well before the shitty show made it popular, was The Boys. I think probably the only thing out there I like better than The Boys is Spider-Man, which I guess that's Marvel. But yeah, I love comics in all shapes and sizes. I read indie stuff, popular stuff, you name it.
Oh, nice. Yeah. So it's out of the big two. Yeah, I'd say I'm more of a DC guy rather than Marvel. I mean, I do read up a bit on the Marvel stuff, but that's just so I can get my facts straight and know the lore, as it were, of the history of it. You know.
Yeah, and I mean, I like DC as well. Don't get me wrong. It's the thing about Marvel that I always loved more than DC. Like when I was reading DC, it was to read like power fantasies and whatnot, as opposed to Marvel always had, by and large, in my opinion, more grounded like humanity to their characters. I got more invested in the actual plight of the human side of like the superheroes and whatnot. But I mean, that being said, DC's got some. I mean, I'm a huge Superman fan. Superman over Batman any day. Lobo is one of my favorite comic villains of all time. Nightwing is
Oh,
easily
Lobo.
Spider-Man. So yeah.
Nice. Yeah, I do like my Lobo as well, and that was actually from the Superman animated series when they got Brad Garrett to voice the Lobo. That was great.
Oh, that's awesome. I actually have not seen a whole lot of Superman the animated series, so I didn't know that Lobo made an appearance. That's awesome. I'll have to go back and watch those episodes. I heard the Superman animated series was real good. Like not apparently not as good as Batman, but that'd be pretty hard to do. But yeah, no, I should go back and watch those. I'm sure they hold up better than the modern day Adventures of Superman show that's airing right now. So
Oh my, yeah, the who that's just yeah, I'm not too happy with the new stuff, that's for sure. I
well,
mean, I went and bought the DVDs for the animated series, and yeah, it's awesome.
I feel like people have always gone into Superman. Like you hear all the time, oh, Batman's so much better. Superman, he's so powerful, he can do anything. Like I feel like people have never gone into Superman comics with the correct mindset that yeah, he can do anything. That's the point. You're not there to see, oh, how is he gonna overcome this? No, you're there to experience like how does what is effectively a god among men, find his humanity. What was his place on Earth? And you're really watching, a character study or reading a character study. You're watching a story driven, a character driven story about how does somebody who is in by human standards effectively flawless navigate in a human world. All of his power means nothing if that humanity isn't there. That's so much more intriguing to me than someone who's just like, my parents were murdered, time to beat up some bad guys to get revenge. Like I've just never been attracted to that sort of hero.
Yeah, and it's hard for Superman to be written to well. Like
I
people can
agree.
write him, sure, but writing him well is takes some talent. And there has been those the writers out there that have done that, you know. And yeah, the one thing that would drive me crazy is when they like nerf him for shows and like and say you don't have to do that.
Well,
You don't have to cut
isn't that
back
what
his power.
Superman the animated series did though? Was that he spends a lot of the time nerfed? That way he's more relatable. Like I said, I haven't seen it in years since it was airing when I was quite a bit younger. So
Yeah, and yeah, that's I think that's what I was alluding to is like they did that on that show, and it's like, oh, you didn't have to do that. You could have just made his the villains more powerful or more cunning or whatever. So
well, I
he
mean
can't
that's
just
what
go in
makes
with brute
Lex Luthor
force.
such a great villain. Is he is the polar opposite. He's just a normal dude. It's his intellect that makes him such a formidable foe. Now, obviously, you couldn't do every episode be Lex Luthor, but that's why Superman has villains like Brainiac or Mister Mixoplick, people that are able to combat Superman in ways that's not brute strength.
Yes. Yeah. And yes, he has superpowers, but he doesn't have like a genius intellect like they would
Right.
have. So he has to figure things out himself, which is good.
But yeah, no, Superman's easily my favorite DC hero. I mean, again, him and Nightwing. But yeah, I like DC. It's definitely like it's been hard to like either of the big two in the last years. But growing up reading comics, I definitely read more Marvel than anything else. Or again, I read a lot of IDW or not IDW, Dark Horse Star Wars stuff. I loved the Archie Sonic the Hedgehog comics. The Archie Sonic run is some of the best. I'm not even exaggerating. Comic books of all time. It holds the Guinness World Record for longest running series based on a video game, which is cool. And then yeah, read The Boys about a decade ago, and that series broke me. So yeah.
No, that's good. And so I collect a lot of them, and I've gone back to like the 1940s.
Oh, that's so cool.
I have some, yeah. Well, I have some issues from then, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s. 80s.
So yeah,
90s.
I don't think I have anything older than the 70s in my collection right now.
But that's okay. And what would you say your oldest one is then?
I've got some old Avengers runs from like 76. It's probably my oldest. But my most prized old possession, or at least old by my standards, is I have my copy of Secret Wars 8, which is so awesome. It's the first appearance of Black Suit Spider-Man, which I think is from like 87 or something like that. I somewhere around there.
Okay, no, that's good. That's good. I think the oldest one I have is has quite fittingly, I have Blue Beetle from 1941.
And I'm sure that thing is going to be worth more than the net investment into that movie that's coming up. Like that's awesome. I didn't even know Blue Beetle was around in the 40s. I won't lie. I didn't hear about him until some of the like 80s Teen Titan runs. So
yeah, okay, yeah, and he's not like he's not a Superman, Batman. He's not like one of the big three or whatever.
Right.
Yeah, he's down there on the list, but it was quite fascinating the history of the Blue Beetle. He was wearing what looked like a suit of armor. And
was he still Egyptian based? Kind of like, or I don't know if he's Egyptian, but like the scarab and whatnot. Was that a thing even back in the 40s?
Nope,
I mean,
no.
I was about to say, because that doesn't seem like the sort of stuff that'd be written back then. So that was a retcon then.
Yeah, you're exactly right. Yeah, so the scarab was with the next iteration of the Blue Beetle, which was Ted Kord. And I believe he had all the sort of the beetle, the bug, he called his ship there, and he had all the gadgets. Whereas the previous guy, who's Dan Garrett, he was a police officer that dressed up as the Blue Beetle to fight crime. There's even an old radio show for the Blue Beetle.
Really?
I've listened to. Oh yes, yep.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, no, I had no idea the Blue Beetle went that far back. So you're like a legit Blue Beetle fan. Like if this movie wasn't so what modern day, this would be right up your alley.
Oh, for sure. And I know of the newest Blue Beetle, Jaime Reyes. And he appeared in I think it was in Brave and the Bold, the Batman Brave and the
animated
Bold cartoon
Batman series.
Yeah, that has a lot of Silver Age stars in it. Like, and that's why I got into going back and buying the older comics, because I'm like, hey, who are these people? I want to get to know them better. So I especially the Flash, Golden Age Flash from 1940s.
Yeah, so I don't own any, but I've read some Golden Age Flash books, and they are awesome. It's what made me a fan, because I did not like the Flash growing up. I was like, because again, growing up a Sonic the Hedgehog fan, anyone else that can run fast, like, no, I disagree. There can only be one speedster. But reading some Golden Age Flash stuff is awesome.
Yeah, for sure. And I just want to say hello to Godzillionaire. Good to see you, buddy.
How you doing, bud?
Everybody's favorite kaiju.
Yeah, I'm a massive Godzilla fan. That's actually I haven't read it yet, but I have some Godzilla versus Power Rangers crossover comics that I got around Christmas of this year, and because they're modern day comics, I don't know if they're gonna be good. But I'm like, it's Godzilla. I'm a massive Godzilla fan. Godzilla's had some good comic runs as well.
Yeah, I haven't gotten into the Godzilla ones, but definitely Definitely a good kaiju if you want to watch. And there's coming out with a new Gamera, I think, show as well.
Oh, yeah, that would be awesome. If you want a good licensed IP comic series before they were rendered non-canon, way before when Supernatural was only on like seasons 1 or 2, if you watched that show, Wildstorm Comics did some prequels called Supernatural Origins, and I have the whole run to those. They are awesome. I wish they'd have kept that canon instead of what the show ended up doing several seasons later. The Wildstorm comics, Supernatural, are great if you like licensed comics. So was the X-Files season 10, season 11, whatever it was, the canonical X-Files comics before they came back with the TV show, the revival. There's been some good TV based comics out there. The Buffy comics were good.
Okay. Yeah. You gotta sort of pick and choose, be selective in because a lot of the stuff is just not, they don't have the same vision, especially the television shows. Sometimes they just mangle it.
Well, and what was great about the X-Files comics was a lot of it individuals that were writers for the X-Files were continue writing the comic. That's why it's called, season, I think it was X-Files season 10. I think the show ended at season 9. And so they called the series X-Files season 10. And it literally it picks up where the show left off, and it does some really cool stuff.
Yeah, back in the day, I did watch a bit of the X-Files. That and the fact it was filmed where I lived, so that was pretty cool.
Oh, you live in Vancouver?
I used to, yeah. I used to live there, and they'd be panning by a shot, and you'd be like, I know where that is.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, that's where so many American shows were filmed in Vancouver because it was cheaper to film there. Like the first season of Supernatural was done in California, then everything after that was done in Vancouver. I think Buffy was done in Vancouver. It's just so cheap, and it's got a very like slice of life Americana look to it, as I guess most of Canada doesn't, but Vancouver has like a very American architecture and stuff. So like USA architecture.
Well, it doubled for New York in Rumble in the Bronx. If you ever watch Jackie Chan movies.
Really? I did not know. I love that movie. I did not know that was shot in Vancouver, though.
Yeah, it sure was.
Yeah, that's awesome. Rumble in the Bronx is a great movie. Like, yeah, I know we're supposed to be talking about comics. I can talk about Jackie Chan movies all day. I'm a huge Jackie Chan fan.
Oh, we're all over the place. It's all good. Stargate was filmed in Vancouver?
I could believe it. So many shows were. I don't know, but I could absolutely believe it was.
That was
Stargate
a good one too.
Really good show. I liked Stargate a lot.
The movie was good.
The movie is good. Yeah. I haven't watched it in years. I don't know if it holds up, but I remember loving it. I growing up watching it.
Yeah. But yeah, back to the Blue Beetle and all that, and Flash. So I have a couple of old comics from the Flash, of the Flash, and also the reprints that DC put out. They're what do they call them? Let's like a compendium, like
the omnibus that has the multiple issues.
Omnibus,
in one.
There you
go.
Yeah. So I buy those up because it's like that's awesome. It's cheaper, and you still get the same. It's like word for word. They don't change anything with the books. They just
that's how I first read the book, because The Boys is like 52 issues or something like that, or 64. So some relatively easy to do number. It doesn't go on for 300-400 issues. And when I first read, it was like there's 7 or 10 omnibus for The Boys that had like 5 issues each in them. And they were that's how I experienced that. And then I got some individual issues, lost those in a separation with a girl, but at the time I had some individual first run because they moved to Dynamite, and I remember who did them originally, but I had the original run of Boys comics before they were taken over by Dynamite. So they were worth a pretty cool penny. Man, I regret not having those anymore.
Oh yeah, you hate that?
Yes, absolutely. I've got first appearance of Rogue somewhere in the apartment around here.
Oh, that's beauty.
That's a really cool book to have. My buddy, I'll never forgive him. He had Amazing Spider-Man. Was it 164? Well, first appearance of Punisher. He had it hanging on his wall, and then his house got broken into, and he was robbed. And that was one. And that was something like clearly the robber either it's on display, so it's valuable, or they were a Spider-Man fan and knew that comic was worth money. But I've never forgiven him for not locking his door and losing that comic. I mean, I would kill to have first appearance of Punisher.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the burglar knew what he was doing. It's like, oh, right? Hey, look, that number, grabbing that.
Yeah, but yeah, and then I have second appearance of Venom. I got signed by Stan Lee. I was so lucky. I got to meet him
Oh,
about 2 years before he passed. I know it wasn't a book that he worked on, but I also was like, well, it's Venom. Obviously being a huge Spider-Man fan, and so yeah, getting to meet him was cool, and that's what I'm really proud of. I mean, it's second appearance, so it's probably not worth much, but that doesn't really matter to me so much. So I was like, it was just amazing to meet Stan Lee and get to talk to him and get his autograph. And apparently he's a Dragon Ball Z fan because he knew Goku was on my shirt. He complimented it. And he was like, "Yeah, I like your Goku shirt, son." And I was like, "Did Stan Lee just name drop Goku? What?"
oh, nice. No, it's awesome. It's awesome watching videos of him too, like when he gave interviews back in the day,
Mm-hmm.
just the way he would talk. And I actually found one of my old VHSs that had from when I was recording the Sci-Fi Channel, and it has him a little. They do like a little 1 minute interview, right? And he's just like talking about how the characters, how the story needs to be genuine, otherwise people aren't going to believe it, you know. And it's like, man, this
If
guy knew what he was
only they
talking
would
about.
follow his lead nowadays. Like, yeah, just go back and watch that old 1 minute interview, Marvel. Maybe you will understand what Stan was talking about.
Yeah, I mean, and I did a whole. I have a whole video on my channel about Marvel is lucky to still be around. And I did like a historical dive back to when they were in the 1940s. They were called Timely.
Timely, yep, they were Timely
And
comics. Yep.
Timely, yep, exactly. And then how they came out with Captain America and all like that, and Joe
Which
Simon
Stan
and
Lee didn't create. I'm sure you know that, but so many people just assume, oh, Stan Lee created all the like.
no,
No, there was like Submariner was way before Stan Lee's time. The original iteration of
that's
Human
right.
Torch was way before Stan Lee's. And like
Yeah,
now, Stan Lee's first writing gig was working on Captain America, but he didn't create the character.
that's right. It was Joe Simon and I don't Jack Kirby. So
I knew Jack Kirby. I couldn't have told you Joel Simon. I did not know that.
well, that's okay. The only reason Stanley got to work at Timely is because his uncle ran the place. So he was related to the owner, and he brought him in as like a gopher. Like that's all it was.
Awesome. I don't think I was aware of that. That's super cool. I know that for a long time he was ashamed to be writing comics because it was very much because he always wanted to be a writer, but he didn't want to writing comic books was not was not a well-respected job. I was gonna say like it is now, but I don't even know if it is now. But yeah, and that's why he used the pseudonym, Stan Lee. That way he didn't have to give his real name out there. He would go to dinner parties and, oh, what do you do? He would just say that he was a writer. He didn't want to acknowledge. And then obviously he embraced it later on, like the late 60s, early 70s, and he became what we know of as Stan Lee. But it's amazing to think that back in the 40s and 50s, he was embarrassed by writing comics.
Yeah, but he was really chomping at the bit. I think it was in Captain America #3 that he wrote his first story. And after that, they obviously the war came along, and so the guys that were Joe Simon and those guys, they joined the army, and so he had to end up doing a lot of the things himself as well. I don't think he ever did any art, but he pretty much took over the office to try to learn how to run it.
Well, and he was also in the war. In fact, really, this is one of my favorite fun facts about Stan Lee. When he was in the war, he was part of a group of 8 or 12 dudes who were called playwrights, and they were the ones who would do like the PSAs for the soldiers, like, hey, you're going to be in the jungle. Here's how to not get syphilis from the women, like stuff like that.
Yeah.
One of the people in his company, one of the other 12 playwrights, was another famous author. Do you know who it was?
Oh, I can't think of it right off the top of my head. No, you got to let me know.
It was Theodore Geisel, a.k.a. Dr. Seuss.
Ah, Dr. Seuss. Yep.
Stan Lee and Dr. Seuss served under the same platoon in World War II.
Very nice. Yes, and he did a lot of work. I'm an amateur historian, so I like to watch the old stuff, and I know there's a lot of Army training films that Theodore Geisel wrote, and they have they have a rhyme to them, and they're like he's so famous at doing his rhyming schemes, and yeah, it was very enjoyable to watch those things.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's knowing that somewhere during World War II, while Hitler was out there gassing Jews, you had Stan Lee and Dr. Seuss writing how-to stuff, how-to videos for the army. It's such a life is stranger than fiction sometimes.
Yeah, it for sure is. And you got Mel Blanc, the famous voice actor. He was
One
lending
of
his
the
voice to
greatest
those
to
as well.
ever live.
Yeah. So
Did
you'd
he
hear
also
his.
serve in World War II? I didn't know that.
Well, no, he wasn't. He wasn't a soldier, but he would put his voice to a lot of the training films that the soldiers would watch.
Really?
Yes.
Oh, that's super cool. No, I did not know that. That's awesome. No, Mel Blanc, that dude was amazing. You said you're an amateur historian, so you probably, what's up, Joseph Dredd? I dig the name.
Hey,
Being an amateur
Joseph.
historian, you probably know this. When he was stuck in a coma, he was in a coma for like 2 weeks and he wasn't coming out of it till they started doing they put on Looney Tunes for him to hear and started referring to him as opposed to Mel. They were like asking like, Bugs, are you in there? Daffy, can you hear us? And once they started doing that, he snapped out of his coma. He came back because people
Yes.
were addressing him as the characters he portrayed, which is mind-meltingly amazing.
Yeah, that's the best feel-good story you could ever ask for, you know.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, so if you ever want to listen to him again, just it's going to be on YouTube. He did the voice of a character called Private Snafu, and we all know what Snafu stands for.
Yeah.
But this was shown to soldiers so that they would remember whatever it happened to be. You know, watch out for booby traps, always wear your gas mask, stuff like that. But he would be the character of Private Snafu, and he'd obviously not do the right thing.
That is so cool. I had not heard. Yeah, I'll definitely need to go back and check those out now because I don't know. I'm a big Mel Blanc fan because voice acting is a massive. I love learning about voice acting. I love meeting voice actors, going to cons and whatnot. So I can't believe I never heard that. Thank you for dropping knowledge on me.
Hey, no problem.
And Mel Blanc's replacement, who was I think today's Mel Blanc, in my opinion, is Billy West. I mean, I think that if anyone was going to take up the mantle, Billy West does such a great Bugs Bunny. It's almost identical. And I was fortunate enough. I got to have like a sit down and have a like almost hour-long conversation with Billy West. That man, he's a treasure.
Nice.
Some of the stuff you can learn from him. Absolute sweetheart. He's really short too. I did not expect him to be as short as he was. He's shorter than me, and I'm like 5'8".
Oh, well, that's okay. Little guy, big voice.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Little guy. Perfect.
No, that's yeah. No, I can't believe I met someone who's as big a Mel Blanc fan as I am because he also had his own radio show in 1946.
That I did know. Yes.
You did know that? Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. It's pretty funny. He ran his own fix-it shop, and he'd bust into characters along the way. They had also had Hans Conried was in it, who was the guy who did the voice of Captain Hook in the Disney Peter Pan.
That I didn't. That's super cool. No, I didn't know that. I know that because we want to talk about voice actors for a moment. Now the guys that worked on the Jungle Book, was the character's name Baloo. He was like a famous like 40s and 50s swing singer, which is why that whole I Want to Be Like You song, like that was actually a famous song even back then that got radio airplay. It wasn't just, I mean, it was done for the Disney film, but like nowadays you think, oh, this song was done for a movie, it gets radio airplay because that happens all the time. But knowing that was being done even back in the 40s or 50s is insane.
Yeah, and I'm blanking on his name right now, but I know who you're talking about. But he was the band leader for Jack Benny.
Really?
And so that he got his start on the Jack Benny show, being the band leader. Phil Harris, that's who it is.
Okay, Phil Harris. Thank you. I could not have told you his name. I knew the role, but
so he was pretty good on that one.
And Joseph Dredd says, I love Tex Avery and Mel Blanc's cartoons. Tex Avery, I know he did a lot of work for the Looney Tunes, and was it, I think, Woody Woodpecker, maybe? I think I know the name Tex Avery, but I don't know near as much about him as I do Mel Blanc. But I think Tex Avery worked on Woody the Woodpecker.
Yeah, and he has a distinctive character design, so you can always tell a Tex Avery character, right? So it's got that certain look to it, and you're like, yeah, that's his style.
Sorry, I thought you said that's his. I thought that was a comma, not a period. Sorry about that. I was like, you say that's his style, and I thought you were going to go on. My bad.
That's his style. Well, why don't I do something here and bring up some Tex Avery characters? I could always do that.
Yeah, please do. I'd like to
Let's
I'd like to see how many of them I actually recognize, because again, the only ones besides Looney Tunes I know were is Woody the Woodpecker. But I'm sure you're gonna pull up some and be like, oh man, I had no idea Tex Avery worked on that, or something to that effect.
Oh, okay. Here we go. Let me just move this over here, and share this. Is that going to work? There we go.
It's full screen.
So yeah.
Oh, there's a classic Groucho Marx character. Oh yeah, okay. I know this suited wolf. I couldn't tell you his name, but I'm very familiar with that.
Yeah. Let's.
Oh, he did Droopy D? Really? How about
Droopy
that?
Dog.
I had no idea.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm not sure what that squirrel's name is.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, these are classic. Yeah, you're right. He does have a very distinctive style.
Yeah, so right away, like everyone remembers Red Riding Hood, of course, because that's the sexy woman that dancing around there, and everybody loved that. Let's see.
Maybe he did. I could swear he worked on. Maybe I'm wrong. Let's see. What's this right here? Yeah, I remember this. I remember this little black kid here. I couldn't tell you his name either.
Yeah, and it looks like he had a hand in doing the Hollywood Stars.
So yeah, I was trying to figure out who that was. Like I said, I know on the left that's supposed to be Groucho Marx, but I don't know who is it supposed to be Vincent Price maybe that he's dancing with? I'm not sure.
It's Clark Gable.
Oh, okay, Clark Gable. Gotcha.
Yep. Yeah, and there's everyone's favorite Red Riding Hood.
Yep. Okay. Yeah, I recognize. Yeah, that visage of her absolutely.
There's some more.
I keep trying to scroll. I'm dumb. I'm not the one.
Yeah, that's.
Is that
me, So James Cagney on the
Brando?
left, and Humphrey Bogart in the middle.
Humphrey Bogart. Okay.
And I can't remember who the fella on the end is. It's I knew it once, but not now.
Yeah, that's super cool. Yeah, these caricatures are really well done. Like obviously being a bit younger, like I look at this and I think back to Animaniacs when it was airing and all of its star caricatures and whatnot. But this is incredible.
Oh yeah, I mean he did such excellent animation.
Well, and animation back then, there was a different weight to it. I don't know how to describe it aside from it having weight. So like when you watch, let's say like Tom and Jerry, for example, and Tom gets hit with a frying pan or whatnot, you feel an impact. It's so differently done than it is now. It's absolutely incredible. I mean, cell animation is absolutely my favorite style of animation. I showed it off on a stream a couple nights ago. I have did you watch the Star Wars Ewoks cartoon back in the day?
Yes, I did. Yep.
I loved that cartoon. I've got one of the old cells that was actually used in the production of it. Like,
oh, nice.
Modern day cartoons that don't use that, they use computers. I can't watch them. They're not the same. Cell animation was easily just the greatest way to watch anything animated.
Yes, hand drawn. Nothing beats hand. Yeah, I know people will be like, "Oh, CGI this, CGI that." Hand drawn. There's nothing like it. You're gonna be like, this is just blowing you away by what they can do.
Right. I mean, like to this day, my favorite cartoon of all time that's not an anime is DuckTales, and it's Disney had a very just expressive. By the way, some of the old Disney comics from back before they were what we think of as Disney now were also great, but when they actually allowed smoking and guns, and they were very, very Looney Tune-esque. Like in the comics, Disney was allowed to be far more violent than and more Looney Tunes-esque than their more kid-friendly shorts and movies and stuff. And but yeah, I adore the animation from whether it be like Fleischer animation, the old Fleischer Superman show. Like that's the only animated Superman show that I've seen in abundance. I love the Fleischer Superman show. Going back
on
to
Blu-ray.
Oh,
Yeah,
really?
you
I mean,
can
see,
get
I've
it
got it
on
on DVD.
Blu-ray.
I didn't
Yep.
know there was a Blu-ray release, but because the DVD
Yeah.
quality is about what you'd expect for a DVD quality, I might have to pick up a Blu-ray of that. That's awesome.
Yeah, I'm looking at it too, and I'm like, oh, the whole Fleischer run, that'd be great.
Yeah, and as a kid, it always confused me because I was like, why is being real young watching those VHS and DVDs, and the S has the black outline as opposed to it being gold and yellow. It is a red red S with a black fill in. And I always thought it was just this cool alternate outfit because reading comics in the 90s, everyone had alternate outfits. I didn't realize that it was an old 1940s or so show.
Yeah, exactly. No,
Is
that was
that true,
great.
Joseph?
And
Wolverine isn't allowed to smoke his cigar in modern comic books?
oh, come on.
I hadn't heard that, but I could absolutely believe it. That was actually around the time I quit reading comics, was the Death of Wolverine 4-part issue,
Oh, okay.
which I think that was like 2014, 2015. As I stopped reading comics, stopped reading
Oh,
modern big two comics. Like it wasn't even for any
yeah,
sort
and
of
stuff.
culture war,
Yeah.
like, oh, it's going woke or anything like that. Like I didn't realize anything like that was going down in the comics industry. I just noticed the drop in quality. Female Thor was what put the nail in the coffin for me. I bought the first few issues of it and thought this sucks. And Female Thor and Death of Wolverine kind of broke me.
Yeah, I stopped buying probably in around 2016. Stopped buying the new ones anyway, because it was
Right.
just like, what? This isn't fun anymore. Why am I being lectured at? I don't need this.
Yeah, I mean, I
I've
bought
lived long enough.
When Spider Gwen first came out. Being a big Spider Man fan, I bought the first few issues of Spider Gwen, and I was somewhat enjoying it. And then they came out with this female Spider variant called Silk, and I was like, this is not bad, but it seems really derivative. We've already got Spider Gwen, or maybe Silk came first and Spider Gwen came right after. I don't remember, but either way, we started to get a bunch of just derivative Spider Man characters. And growing up, like Spider Man 2099 is one of my favorite comic book runs ever. Like it's top 10 for me, easy. I love the entire Spider-Man 2099 run. So I'm like not even against variants of different heroes, but there's got to be some sort of context. And when they were all Spider-Man 2099, that's in the far-flung future, as opposed to you had Miles Morales and Silk and Spider-Gwen all in the same vicinity as Spider-Man. I'm like, they're trying to do, it felt like they were trying to do a Bat family for Spider-Man, which I don't think works for him as a character. So there was never any sort of like, I didn't understand the agenda stuff till probably, like you said, 2016, 2017, right around then. That's just, I stopped in 2014
Yeah,
or 15 because it just was feeling different. And then the agenda stuff I learned about later. Yeah, the 2099 universe was awesome, Godzillionaire. Ghost Rider 2099 was awesome. Punisher 2099. I wasn't a big fan of X-Men 2099. I couldn't get behind the aesthetics of it. Like everyone else in 2099 just visually looked cool. I thought the X-Men looked really janky and weird.
oh yeah, Joseph. John Malin talks about how he had an editor that told him to redraw Wolverine because he isn't allowed to smoke.
That is so dumb.
Ridiculous. Like, ugh. But yeah, those it's nice to see how far the comics have come because back in the 1950s they had the comics code because they thought comics are going to lead to more juvenile delinquency and kids committing crimes.
Yeah,
and
like
it's too bad.
1950, that there's so much of it that's tied to like McCarthyism and the Red Scare as well. Like obviously comics were heavily uncensored compared to like movies and TV of the time. And yeah, there was obviously some very fundamental Christian parent that were scared of things you could see in comics. But even though by today's standards they were nothing, but like by 1940s and 50s standards they were getting graphic. But then you also had people who were terrified that comics could be used as a way to indoctrinate children into communism. So there was there's a McCarthyism element to it, and it got to a point where you were really only allowed to do like westerns and romances, and the superhero comics that were there was they weren't very good. Like again, there's some exceptions. Like 1950s Flash is very good, but I mean, I do not like 1950s era Batman comics, for example. Not a fan. Godzilla says, was McCarthy wrong, though? At this point, fair enough.
Maybe he wasn't wrong, but maybe he went about it the wrong way.
Ahead of his time.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I'm definitely more comfortable in the 60s and onwards, or like old school like 30s era where you had like Conan and whatnot. But I'm not some 50s stuff I've read I've enjoyed, but as a whole, yeah, I either stick with the 30s or jump 60s and onward.
Okay, I could see that. It's in the 50s. It was more they were trying like to science things up because you have what's called the atomic age cartoons or sorry
Right.
comics, which happened after the drop of the atomic bomb. So anytime after that, they would
Which when
try
it
to
comes,
use
I
science.
love that era of cinema. You have things like Godzilla, you have things like Them, which Them is one of my favorite horror movies of all time. There's some great atomic age, black and white, just fun monster movies. But yeah, I guess I don't know what it is about comics. I don't know if I don't want to say, oh, they're too cheesy, because I just said I love the movie Them, so like that can't be the reason. But I also haven't tried to read anything like that in years, so I might have to go back with an attempt at a new appreciation.
Yeah, and you're saying 1930s. So I've read some 1930s stuff. Dick Tracy, believe it or not,
Dick Tracy is great.
when the movie with Warren Beatty came out, Madonna, there was sort of a resurgence, and they released a bunch of
That was the
compilation
'90s
books.
movie, right?
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Yeah. I haven't seen that in God knows how long. It was. I actually thought about rewatching it maybe a year ago, because I was dating this girl and I was trying to show her like old, like, because she was one of those like more recent nerds because of the MCU, and I was like, oh, we should go back and watch some old stuff and show you what old nerd culture was like. And
Yeah,
but we never got around to watching Dick Tracy, so I haven't seen it since I was probably 12 or so years old. But I bet it holds up. I remember it being a good, fun movie.
I think it
Forbidden
does.
Planet was also great. Yes, Joseph, Forbidden Planet's
Yes,
great.
with Leslie Nielsen, a young Leslie Nielsen.
Yeah, excuse me, pre Naked Gun Leslie Nielsen.
Yes, by far. I think
I
he
don't
had.
know if I don't know really when Leslie Nielsen got famous. I know my first experience with him was either Airplane or Naked Gun, but I don't know if he would have been famous before that or not, because it was so before my time.
Yeah. Madonna could play Prune Face in a remake. Oh, God, Zillionaire. Nice. Yeah. No, that's good. And yeah, because when the movie came out in the 90s, they released compilations of the comic strips, and I went and bought up like 3 different books from there and read through them, and I'm like, man, this is hard hitting, gritty, people getting shot, and it's they don't pull any punches. They're just like, nope, this is how it is. This is Chicago in the 1930s, and that's what it's all about.
Well, I didn't know, that doesn't surprise me at all, but I didn't know they re-released a bunch of physical comics. But I do remember they were reprinting them in the Sunday paper, because like the Sunday paper would always have the funnies, but it also had
Okay.
Dick Tracy and Spider-Man. It had like 6 panels of each or whatever, and then next to that would be like Peanuts and non sequitur and stuff, and Family Circus. But it was so that was like my introduction to Dick Tracy comics, was reading it in the Sunday. Yeah, the Sunday funnies. Even though it was, like I said, that and Spider-Man were not funny. I don't know why those two were in there.
Yeah, exactly. No, that's good stuff though. Like, and I think people talk about, especially the people that complain about the modern storytelling, the modern comics, modern movies. All I got to say to them is, there's a century of stuff to watch and read and listen to. All
Yeah.
this
Oh
stuff
man,
started
the old George
back then.
Reeves Superman show is. I mean, I don't know if great's the right word, but I really like it. Like, you go
Yeah,
back and watch the George Reeves Superman, and or the Billy Batson Shazam show. I don't know the actor that played him, but
Captain Marvel.
Captain
That,
Marvel. Yeah.
that's it. Yeah, so I will always call him Captain Marvel. I won't call, you know what I mean? I won't call him Shazam. Shazam's the name of the wizard. The
Right. Yeah.
hero is Captain Marvel.
Even as a kid, I knew it was Captain Marvel, but still always called him Shazam, just because I was a dumb kid. So it was a habit I got into, not for any source material, not because like, oh, Marvel also has a Captain Marvel. I was just a kid, and that's why I always referred to him as, and it sort of stuck. Even though now as an adult, I know he's Captain Marvel, and I still say Shazam.
Yeah, yeah. It's because it was pretty much an agreement that DC entered into with Marvel to be like, okay, we won't advertise him as Captain Marvel. We'll still call him
Right.
that in the comics, but we won't advertise him as that. And I'm like, oh, that's unfortunate.
Yeah, Joseph Dredd says 90s Flash with John Wesley Shipp. I've never actually seen the 90s Flash show, the live action one. I've heard mixed things about it, but I've never watched it myself.
I've got it on DVD. Me and the wife watched it. It was enjoyable. I liked it. They did really well keeping to the source material. And who was it? The guy that does was it? I'm trying to think of the guy that did the music. He did it for, you'd know right away it's his music. It's not Brad Bird. It's somebody else. Darn. I'm sure you guys will figure it out in chat.
Yeah, lay it on us in chat. Yeah, I'd like to be surprised. Like, oh yeah, now I'm curious who did the music for the 90s Flash show.
It's that's the problem with seeing a lot of things. You forget a lot of things.
And then, speaking of great comic book adaptations in the 90s, I don't know if it was late 80s or early 90s when we got Hasselhoff as Nick Fury, but that's great. I can't say the same thing about the Captain America movie from the 90s. I actually only watched that for the first time like 2 years ago to see if it was as bad as everyone says. And yeah, it is.
It is.
Oh, dude, don't give it. It's not even fun. Like if you're hanging out with a group of friends and you want to like pop some popcorn, drink some beer, and make fun of it, but it's not like a solo. Let's see if it's worth it. I can assure you it's not. The 90s Captain America movie is bad. Really, Danny Elfman did the music?
Danny Elfman, that's it. That's who it is.
Oh wow, yeah, no,
Yes.
You're right. He has a distinctive style. If I had heard the flat, I probably would have immediately known that's Danny Elfman. But yeah, I didn't know that he did music for TV. Period. Anytime I think of Danny Elfman, I always think of like film scores, or of course think of his band. Why am I blanking on their name? Dead Man's Party is one of their biggest songs. I can't remember Danny Elfman's band. Really good song called Little Girls.
Come on, chat, help us out. And hello, DJ
this is gonna kill me.
Good to see you, buddy.
You wouldn't know I've got at least a couple of their cassettes in my car. But anyway, we can continue. I'm sure, chat's gonna help us out with Danny Elfman's band.
Oh, they will.
I keep
they
wanting
will.
to say Chumbawamba, but that's
chat.
a completely different band. I know it's not Chumbawamba. That's just the name that's popping into my head right now.
No, it's like I say, the 90s Flash. Yeah, we watched it. I thought it was good. It was because we were watching the newest one by the CW at the time. And
I have not seen any of the CW shows. Are any of them worth watching? Okay. I hear a lot of people love Arrow, but that's the only one I've actually heard. And then people like Grant Gustin as the Flash. I've not heard if the show is good. Oingo Boingo, thank you. See, Chumbawamba, Oingo Boingo. I knew it was like two syllables.
So close.
But, I know people love Grant Gustin as the Flash, but I've never heard if the show itself is good.
Yeah. So I would say first 2 seasons are good. The rest of it, don't worry about it.
Like, yes, I knew I was never gonna watch it when I heard they tried to do Flashpoint in one episode.
Oh,
and you can't do the Flashpoint story in one 42-minute episode of a TV show. They couldn't even. Apparently, they couldn't even pull it off in an almost 3-hour movie. As if I thought they were gonna do it right anyway. But let alone a 42-minute episode of a TV show.
Yeah, they just don't know. Well, those guys, they don't know how to do comic book movie or television shows anyway. They just put too much of beating you over the head with a message. And I'm not there for that. I'm there to, have a good time, but
okay. Godzillionaire says Legends of Tomorrow are entertaining. I did see a little bit of Legends of Tomorrow. I forgot that was in that same continuity. I did like Legends of Tomorrow. I really like Brandon Routh as an actor. I think that he's an incredibly underrated actor. I love his Superman. Superman Returns I actually genuinely think that movie gets so much more shit than it deserves.
Yeah, I watched it and I'm like, you know what? This is good. This does okay. And Legends of Tomorrow, I agree with Godzillionaire. After the 3rd season, just don't even bother. Just gets terrible,
I see. Arrow's decent for a couple of seasons. CW Flash good for about 2 seasons. I guess I've never seen Arrow. That said, I love the stills I've seen of Deathstroke when he appears in Arrow. Like his costume is, for a TV show to get that good looking of a costume for Deathstroke, I thought was incredible. But I've never actually seen the show. I've just seen the pictures of what Deathstroke looks like.
Okay. Well, there is, and they come together. Legends of Tomorrow is like a superhero team that comes together. And we all know about the Justice League. but there's my favorite that was there before. This predates the Justice League.
The Justice Society of America. That's pretty great.
So
you've got Dr. Fate. I'm trying to see, Dr. Fate there in the center. Is that the Atom in the bottom left?
Sitting, yes, yep, that's him. That's the Atom.
And then you've got Hawkman, the top left. Obviously Batman, Superman. You've got Golden Age Flash.
Yeah.
I know the dude in the fedora and his is that the Question?
Nope.
No, it's not the Question. Okay. Oh no, the Question has a big question mark on his face. Never mind, I'm done.
Question has, yeah, that's okay. That's the Sandman.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
I don't recognize the blonde dude in the suit at all. That one's throwing me through the loop.
Blonde dude in the suit. Oh,
yeah.
Okay, yeah. He wouldn't, unless you follow like the All-Star comics and all that from back then. That is Johnny Thunder, and he has a genie that he orders to do his bidding.
Okay. Is that above Wonder Woman? Is that the Phantom?
That's the Spectre.
The Spectre. Sorry. The Spectre.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then, so you were talking about early age Blue Beetle. Is that who was above Dr. Fate? Did I say Dr. Manhattan earlier? If I said Dr. Manhattan, I meant to say Dr. Fate. Anyways, Blue Beetle the one that's above Dr. Fate?
No, that's Wildcat.
Gotcha. Okay, I'm not familiar with Wildcat either.
Yeah, so for those of you that don't know, so obviously the top two are Batman and Superman, who were honorary members of the Justice Society. And they were honorary because they had their own comic books. The rule was if you got your own comic book, you sort of retired from the Justice Society.
So
these guys were honorary.
A lot of these guys ended up getting their own comics. Was this prior to that? They started as a team up and then branched out?
Yeah. So if they got popular enough. So then you got on the left, starting from the left at the top row, that's the Spectre, followed by the Hawkman. Then there's Hourman, the Flash, Wildcat. There's Mr. Terrific, Johnny Thunder, and then there's Starman. And then starting again at the left in the bottom row is Wonder Woman, followed by Green Lantern, Sandman.
Okay, so I thought that was Green Lantern, but I was like, I don't remember Green Lantern having a cape. That was the part that was throwing me off. It's like I don't remember even earlier Green Lantern having a cape. So I'm like, it looks like Green Lantern, but I don't think. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, and then beside the Sandman is Doc Midnight. Then, like you pointed out, Dr. Fate. This is Red Tornado #1, and then beside.
Oh, okay. I was curious who that was. I did not know Red Tornado's original look included like a bucket head. That's super cool. To see an old Red Tornado.
It's because it's like an old granny who dressed up as it. It was
really
for comic relief.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and then you got the Red Tornado, and then you got Black Canary.
Okay, so that is an early Black Canary. See, that's where I would have guessed, but I also was like, I didn't know Black Canary was even around back then. So I was like, that's who it looks like to me, but I wasn't sure.
Yeah, she came around in 1947.
Oh wow, she's way older than I thought she was.
Yeah, and then like you said, at the bottom was the Atom, and then beside him is Robin.
See, I knew that was Robin. I won't lie, I've never seen that outfit on Robin before, but that's a really cool look. I think that's something that needs to be brought back. That's a really cool look for Robin.
Yeah, I actually like his 70s Nightwing look.
Yeah, every Nightwing look is awesome. I've never seen a Nightwing that disappointed me, if I'm going to be 100% honest with you. I mean, I've seen some writing interpretation I don't like, but visually, Nightwing has always looked awesome.
Yeah. So I took a deep dive into this.
Got zillionaires over there trying to guess him as well. Awesome.
Oh,
Jake
okay,
Garrick, Flash.
He did pretty good.
Yeah, when you said Justice Society of America, before you pulled up the photo, my immediate thought was the Justice Friends, the 70s show, which is to this day I love that show. I won't even lie.
Super Friends.
Super Friends. Thank you. Sorry, Super Friends.
Yeah. I remember watching that too when I was a kid.
Anyone that ever told me that Aquaman was useless, I always pointed to that show because they always found a way to make Aquaman relevant, and I appreciate it. And then I actually read Aquaman comics and realized he's awesome. Yeah, I don't stand for
Yeah.
Aquaman hate. I've not stood for Aquaman hate in a very long time until Jason Momoa came around, and I was like, okay, now I can start to understand some Aquaman hate. But prior to that, nah, people slept on Aquaman.
Yeah, he was useful for what he needed to do. But yeah, like I said, I took a deep dive into the Justice Society and tried to learn as much as I can. And I bought runs and runs of their comics. Like it was just amazing how many comics they have out there. And it's good stuff, like All Star Comics. And then they went to war. Like they formed what was called the Justice Battalion to fight the totalitarian governments across that were happening during World War II.
Oh, that's super cool. No,
So
I didn't know
that was
that. Oh, that's awesome. No, when it comes to World War II, yeah, I love because I didn't know this until I was watching some documentaries and whatnot, and one on the history of Superman. And since obviously World War II was well before my time, I had never considered Superman comics were obviously going on at the same time, and people would were asking back in the time, why isn't Superman helping during World War II? So they had to come up with a clever reason why Superman couldn't go there and fight. And what they had done was they had Clark Kent go in to sign up for the service, and he was doing his eye exam, and he was looking through to the other doctor's office next to him and using his X-ray vision, that he read the eye exam for that one by mistake, and so they didn't let him enlist because he couldn't see, basically, which is a very clever way to keep Superman out of World War II.
Yeah. Well, that was the thing. You don't want to diminish what the soldiers are doing.
Right. Oh, yeah. And
So
at the end of the book, they have Superman say that, like, oh, America doesn't need me to beat the Nazis or whatever it was. I'm like, that's a
yeah,
great line.
yeah, and it was. They also came up in the comics with the fact that Hitler had the Spear of Destiny, and what that would do is if
Really?
they would turn the good heroes evil the closer they got to it. So the closer they would get to Germany, the more they would turn and start to fight their own guys, because they would turn evil. So that's sort of how they got around it as
super
well.
cool. Doing Civil War like 60 years before Marvel ever dreamed of it.
Yeah, and that was the thing about Marvel, or timely as they were. They would only copy what was popular at the time. They wouldn't try to lead on their own and stand on their
Right.
own laurels with stuff like that. So
Yeah, it wasn't until about the 70s where things flipped and DC started copying Marvel. And I won't lie, I'm not sure where the switch happened, because like for a long time, the only thing that Marvel had that was not really a copycat of DC was Spider-Man, and other than that, almost everything
yep,
else was Aquaman aside, because Aquaman was a copy of the Submariner. But other than that, almost everything Marvel did,
yep.
yeah, was a ripoff, and I don't know when and why the switch happened.
It might have been when Kirby went from Marvel to DC, because that's when he created the New Gods and Darkseid and all that. So I don't
Right.
know if that's when that happened. But
Yeah,
yeah, the 60s.
that's one that gets credit. People say that Thanos was a ripoff of Darkseid, but the creator of Thanos, I don't remember his name offhand, swears up and down he didn't even know who Darkseid was. That it's just happenstance that they looked so similar and whatnot. That there was no Darkseid inspiration behind Thanos whatsoever. Now, either he's lying, or that could just be a case of, man, sometimes artists have a similar mindset. Like you see it all the time in stand-up comedy. Sometimes stand-up comedians come up with a similar premise for a joke where the punchline just ends differently. And so I believe that happens in comics
Yeah,
as well. But then you've got characters like Black Cat,
yep,
who
for
is
sure.
very clearly a derivative of Catwoman.
Yes, that's for sure. Yeah, actually, the 60s was where Marvel turned it around, obviously, and that was DC's fault, because
Really? Why is
two of
that?
the executives, one from each company, were out on a golf course, and the DC guy was bragging. He's like, "Oh yeah, we got this superhero team, and it's selling like hotcakes. People love it." And the Marvel guy's like, "Huh." So he goes back to Stan Lee and says, I need a superhero team. I need you to make one up for me." And
Is
that's
that
where the
when Stanley
Fantastic
comes up with
Four
the
came.
X-Men?
Fantastic Four.
Oh, so this is before the Fantastic Four. Okay, gotcha.
Well, no.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Marvel's
before the
first
X-Men.
family.
Yes. So Fantastic Four was created, and it took off as well. And that was when that's
And that
when
was when
Marvel
Stan Lee
started to
decided
really.
to break the comics code, correct? He was just like, fuck, I'm going to just do what I want.
I don't know. I think maybe in the 70s they were breaking away from listening to what the comics code would say, and
He's like,
I'd have to try to
that's the
pinpoint it.
I don't know if there's any truth to it. That's the story that Stan Lee tells, is that basically he was wanting to quit comics, and his wife was like, "Look, make something you like, and if it doesn't work out, you can go ahead and quit." And that's what what drove him to make the Fantastic Four, was he wanted to see a superhero family, not just a team of like friends or buddies to get along, but like a legitimate family. And
Yeah,
he said that he just didn't take the code into consideration when making the Fantastic Four.
and that's good because it was antiquated, and people were realizing that comics aren't that bad after all.
Right. And then Joseph Dredd says the Amalgam comics with Thanos Seed. Yeah, the Amalgam comics from the 90s. Those were great. I love. Okay, let me take that back. They're actually not that good, but they're a lot of fun.
Yeah, that's for sure. And
Wolverine and Batman became like Nightclaw or something, which was a really cool look. I think Spider-Man and Superboy were a crossover. Obviously Captain America and Superman crossed, I believe. Is this the original Teen Titans right here?
Nightwing costume.
Look at that. That is great. Who is that on the far left?
Oh, that I'm not sure of. No, I don't know who
that one I'm not recognizing at all.
Like on the right is I believe that's Donna Troy, I think. And then Raven, and then Cyborg. I'm not sure who the little
I don't know who the little one in the glasses is either. Then you got Nightwing, Starfire, and
Beast Boy. I think they also call him Changeling.
Oh, I did not know that. That's cool.
I think so. But yeah, don't know who that is.
So this is 70s era Teen Titans, correct?
Yeah.
And that's such a cool look for Cyborg.
Yeah, I mean, he looked like that in Super Friends too.
I don't remember him showing up in Super Friends, honestly, but I also haven't watched the show in God knows how long. The only ones I remember, obviously, were the key ones. You had Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, Aquaman. You had the twins. And I think Green Lantern shows up later on, but I feel like maybe a one-off or something.
So there's a couple different iterations of the Super Friends. There was the one from 1973, which had like the 4 or 5 original members, and then there was like the Challenge of the Super Friends, where they had more. There's like 13 villains and 7 Super Friends, and then there was the Galactic Guardians.
I ever saw that one, or if I did, I didn't realize that it was a different like a sequel show.
Okay.
Kid Flash from the Teen Titans. Did you ever watch growing up? Because I don't know how much older than me you are, but did you grow up watching Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends?
Yep, that was one of my favorite ones.
I loved that show, and I had no idea at the time that Firestar was not a comic book character, that she was created for the show and then got her introduction to the comics later. But I loved Firestar, man, and I credit that show with the reason that Iceman is my favorite X-Man.
There you go. So yeah, there's Challenge of the Super Friends.
Okay, yeah, I did see this. I didn't realize that it was like a spinoff or whatnot. I always just thought this was just more Super Friends. I didn't know it was technically a different show.
Yeah, that's so they added more, and then there was what is it? Galactic Guardians.
I think I don't know if Bizarro was in Super Friends or if he didn't come until Challenge of the Super Friends, but whichever it was, that was my introduction to Bizarro, who became one of my favorite villains.
Okay. Yeah, there we go. The Superpowers team, Galactic Guardians. And there's Cyborg.
This one I don't think I'm familiar with. I don't think I ever saw this this version of Flash in a show this old. So yeah, I don't know if I ever watched this.
I think that was 85. That when it came out.
Yeah, that was a good one. Learning so much history, right on.
Yeah, and there's the one after this. Were taking on Darkseid a lot more regularly, so you got to see a lot of Darkseid and Frank Welker doing the voice of Darkseid.
Really? Oh, that's super cool. That's another really talented voice actor. I can see Frank Welker doing
Oh yeah,
Darkseid. That's awesome.
yeah. No, he's excellent. Like he's got quite such a range, such a good, and he did so much of my childhood heroes and characters.
See, I wonder why because for a while they stopped doing superhero content like this until Batman the Animated Series more or less brought it back. What came first, Batman the Animated Series or X-Men? I think X-Men actually came first, didn't it?
What is that? What was X-Men,
The
91 or
animated. I think
92?
X-Men was 94.
Okay, so Batman I
Or
think was
96
92.
maybe. Okay, so Batman did come first. Okay, gotcha. Like Batman the Animated Series, and then X-Men the Animated Series really kind of brought superheroes back to the animated forefront, because there was a period where they just weren't there. And then from that we got Spider-Man, we got the Hulk, we got Iron Man, we got Superman. Eventually led to Justice League like 03 or whatever it was, which was I loved the Justice League show in the early 2000s.
Yes, that was a must watch. I've made sure to grab those all on DVD. They're excellent. And then Justice League Unlimited, which followed that.
Yeah, which was equally as great. I think the early 2000s, and I mean I guess also the early 90s, starting with Batman the Animated Series, but that's when they started really caring about adapting source material as opposed to just taking famous characters and making all original. Because like Super Friends, those weren't, to my knowledge, adaptations of existing source material. It was its own unique stories, just using the characters from the comics. Whereas things like Justice League and my personal favorite adaptation, one of my favorite adaptations, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2003, more or less followed the comics, or at least adapted very particular stories as best they could.
Yeah. Okay, I'm looking it up here, and it looks like X-Men the Animated Series and Batman the Animated Series both in 92.
Oh, were they? Oh, I thought X-Men was the mid 90s. Okay, I didn't realize it was that early.
92 to 97.
Wow. I don't remember having that long of a run, but that's awesome.
Yeah, it is good.
Yeah, the 90s X-Men series is great. The 80s X-Men series is awful. I'm not a fan of it in the slightest. But the 90s X-Men series is great. And then in the early 2000s, they also had X-Men Evolution, which I used to love. I've not rewatched it, but I loved it, when it was airing. Seeing it was like, I think that might have been like the first time I'd ever seen Nightcrawler outside of the comics. I reading I loved Nightcrawler, played him in games like X-Men Mutant Academy, but I had never seen him in a show. He wasn't, I don't think he was in the animated X-Men series, or if he was, not very much. So when they did Kurt Wagner as just this sort of spunky Michelangelo-esque teenager in X-Men Evolution, it was perfect.
Yeah, the angsty teenagers. I remember X-Men Evolution.
And then I loved their version of Rogue. A very different departure for the character, but I think it worked nonetheless. Jean Grey did nothing for me. She never really has. I've never really understood the fascination behind Jean Grey, but that's just me.
Yeah, I get it too. It's like, what? Why?
Like the Dark Phoenix stuff, comic wise, super cool, but I don't care about the character. I never really have. I've never really been a huge X-Men guy as a team though. Like I love individual X-Men. I love I love Iceman. I love Beast. I have a love-hate relationship with Wolverine, but I never read a lot of X-Men comics with them as a team, just because they didn't speak to me like something like Spider-Man did, or I loved reading Hulk back in the day, but. Yeah, never read a lot of X-Men.
No, and speaking of the modern ones, X-Men and the Earth's Mightiest Heroes, so the Avengers cartoon, that is some of their best work before Marvel got bought by Disney.
Yeah, I agree. Like Marvel always seemed to drag behind DC in the animated department, but people slept on the Avengers. The animated Avengers were awesome.
Yeah.
I
Now,
remember
let me get this.
they did this. They did a straight to DVD, a couple straight to DVD movies, and the second one was Marvel's Avengers, like the Secrets of Wakanda or something like that, where they introduced Black Panther, and it was I loved ever since Spider-Man 2002 came out, the Sam Raimi Spider-Man. Like I saw that movie, it was life changing, and from then on, I was an advocate for a Black Panther movie. I was in like 4th or 5th grade talking about how we needed a Black Panther movie, and eventually happened, and it sucked. But man, no one in 2005 or whatever, 2002 was talking about a Black Panther movie, but your boy wanted one real bad.
Yeah. No, that's like I say, Earth's Mightiest Heroes are good. Don't watch Avengers Assemble, you guys. Don't even bother. Disney had bought Marvel by then, and they
I don't
tried
know
to
if I've
make them
ever
look
heard of
like
that
the
one.
well, they tried to make them look like the movies. Like they took
Oh,
the
gotcha.
character designs from the movies, whereas Earth's Mightiest Heroes, they are more comic book accurate. And it's just
I mean,
good
Thor
story.
looks like Thor, and that's such a it's such a great look. That was a lot of people's complaint about the Square Enix Avengers video game, was that people were upset that they didn't look enough like the MCU characters. And I was like, it's a Japanese company making something Avengers based. Not everything has to tie to the MCU. Now the game ended up being garbage, so it is what it is. But it wasn't garbage because they didn't look like their MCU counterparts. It was garbage for a bunch of different reasons. Did you? I don't know how much of a gamer you are, but did you ever play the game Marvel Ultimate Alliance?
No. Was it for PS3?
It was for PS2, and
Okay.
it was.
I might have.
Did you ever play like Gauntlet or any like top-down dungeon crawler?
Yes, I'm familiar with Gauntlet. Yeah.
So it's a top-down dungeon crawler, but starring all the Marvel heroes, and you can choose a team of 4, and it was incredible. It was one of the best RPGs of that era, and for an RPG to not be like a sword and sorcery sort of thing, but instead be done with the Marvel characters was so great. Early 2000s, we could have had Denzel Washington, Black Panther. That's a good casting. Yeah, I would definitely have done. Yeah, that
would have been
who
good.
else could you have had in the early 2000s? What famous charismatic black actor would have done a good Black Panther? You may have hit the nail on the head with Denzel. I don't know if anyone would have done it better.
Yeah. No, for sure.
I would love to see a Black Panther storm arc in the movies. I mean, not with the way movies are being made now, but like if we could have back then, yeah, I would agree with you. If we could go back to the golden era of superhero movies, yeah.
Oh, I mean, Golden Age comics, they did have Golden Age movies. There was Batman back in the 1940s. There was.
I knew there were serials, but I didn't know they had movies.
Well, I mean, yeah, okay. I'll refer to the serial as a movie, but yes.
Okay,
so they
gotcha. My bad.
They had Batman and Robin, and they were taking on fifth columnists, people that were trying to disrupt America during the war. So there was Batman back then. There was also Superman back in the day, and the way he would fly is the guy would freeze in his position, and then they would take over with animation and to have him fly off.
Yeah, those are the old George Reeves ones I was talking about earlier.
Even before that.
Really? Even before him? Oh, okay. I didn't realize there was any live action Superman before George Reeves. Like, that's he was the first one that I knew of wore the suit.
Yeah. No, the guy's name was Kirk Allen, and he played Superman, and he did the same thing, like a serial. Yeah.
Yeah, I had no idea about that. That's more homework. I'm sure I can find that on YouTube as well, because you probably can't pop on like HBO Max and watch old 40s Superman serials, but
YouTube's got it usually. But yeah, and there was also Captain Marvel back in the day too. They did that. They had that for a 12 episode serial that they played.
So would this be before? Because I mentioned the Captain Marvel show earlier. Are you talking about there's one before the one that I mentioned as well?
Once again, in the 1940s, black and white.
Wow. That's awesome. I thought the superhero serial boom like started in the 50s. I didn't realize there was these. I mean, I knew there was like radio plays and stuff, but I didn't know there were serials going that far back.
Yeah, you betcha. And I like I say, amateur historian. I like to do my homework and watch stuff that's come before, so you can see where the inspiration was, and what they could do as far as practical effects and such like that. And sometimes they did really well.
Yeah, no, I mean, the Wonder Woman show, for example, with oh my goodness, I'm blanking on her name.
Linda Carter.
But yeah, the Linda Carter Wonder Woman, I think still holds up far better than Adam West Batman. Like that show you watch, sort of, it's hokey for a laugh. It's still got some good aspects to it, but as opposed, I think Linda Carter Wonder Woman actually is a very good show.
Yeah, and I have to look into getting getting it all on DVD there, so we can my wife and I can watch it, because it was good. Oh, and Joseph Dredd says the Batman serials from 1943 are on YouTube. There we go.
Well, yeah, I will check those out. That's awesome. I had no idea.
Yeah,
speaking of being the historian you are and whatnot, have you ever gone back and watched The Man Who Laughs, the silent film that they based the character of the Joker off of? Because that's a great. Once I found out about the Joker, I went back and watched that movie, and very, very cool film history to watch. That's, at least it used to be on YouTube. I assume it still is.
That's one to add to my list, though. I think The Man Who Laughs. Yeah. Good
It's not comic book related in any way, shape, or form, aside from the characters who was the basis for the Joker. But if you want to look and be like, oh yeah, I can totally see how they based the Joker on this character. It's a cool little like lead up to comic book history.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Where Bob Kane, Bill Finger got their idea for the Joker,
who was supposed to just be a one-off villain, and now he's got a he's a pop culture icon.
Yes. Yeah. He was very mean when he first came out. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't want to say psychotic, but it doesn't classify it as sort of what we think of being psychotic now. But, he was he was a criminal. He's a criminal, and he was very vicious. And I'm glad he was, they brought him to life with the way they put him in the comics.
Yeah, well, that's how the Shredder was in the Ninja Turtles comics as well. If you read the old school Ninja Turtles comics, spoiler alerts for comics that came out in like 1984, Shredder dies at the end of the first book. He was supposed to also be a one-off villain, and by popular demand, he came back, and he has a great backstory. Like, yeah, Shredder and Joker. There's some characters that should have that were supposed to just be one and dones that for whatever reason resonated really well.
Yeah, and that's good. And I've looked through, like, my local bookstores had like the reprints of the old comics from the Turtles there, and it's like all dark, gritty, black and white.
Yeah, they were not for kids.
And I'm like, oh, this is good.
They were adult-oriented comics. Like, they were parody. They were supposed to be a parody of modern superhero comics, with most of the backstory taken from Daredevil. And it even alludes to the fact that Daredevil was their original owner, because it's when you read the first book, it's a blind kid carrying, a thing of turtles, and the toxic ooze, a truck carrying toxic ooze comes, and someone pushes the blind kid out of the way, and it causes him to drop his turtles, and that's the ooze gets all over the turtles. But the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles were a very adult, mature oriented themed parody comic that became its own thing. The old Turtles comics, definitely not for children. The Last Ronin TMNT comic miniseries, it is the last Ronin TMNT comic is awesome. It was like that was a return to form for Turtles comics. Hello, Woopa Troopa. It was also the first time in years that I think Kevin Eastman and Peter Laird worked together, because they had a falling out over how the Turtles were handled. One of them wanted to keep it very adult oriented and keep the legacy of what the Turtles originally were alive. While the other one was A-okay with selling out and gearing it more towards children. And I mean, nowadays Ninja Turtles is looked at as a children's IP, but man, if you read those old comics, no, there's blood and there's swearing and there's nudity, and like, old Turtles comics are great.
Yeah, I mean, it's and that's why sometimes you need to have a single creator on something, because you get two people collab, and one guy likes it one way, one guy likes it the other way, and problems are going to happen.
Right. Sophia Necto, how you doing? If I pronounced that right, I apologize if I didn't.
Looks like Russian. We don't speak Russian, but
no, speaking of like adaptations and the Ninja Turtles, the original 1990 Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie is very close to the original source material. It's one of the most source material accurate comic book films to date, in my opinion.
That was great. I was in my senior year of high school when that came out, and everyone was playing the Turtles soundtrack in their cars
with MC Hammer on it.
MC Hammer and Vanilla Ice and all that stuff, and it's like, that was a good movie, good soundtrack. It did a good job portraying, because I had watched the '86 cartoon.
Right, which I love to this. That's my favorite version of the Turtles, even though it is not the most source material accurate. That was my introduction to the Turtles. So that's by default my favorite, even though the 03 version is technically a better adaptation. Like, yeah, the '86 cartoons were, I mean, there's nothing like them,
Yeah, well, we're gonna take what we can get, right? When we're that little.
Well, and also, I mean, the toy. At the end of the day, it was the toys. I mean, that's why the show was created. But man, I had so many of those old 80s turtle toys. And like, I know a lot of people were into Masters of the Universe. I won't lie, I was never a Masters of the Universe guy. Turtles was always my thing. Transformers were fine, but if you had to say, what toys from the 80s was your go? Oh, Ninja Turtles all day. Ninja Turtles and Star Wars were the toys that made me.
Yeah, Ninja Turtles and the video games that came out with them and all that. The stupid hard one on the NES that you could never
Turtles in Time or whatever it was.
Through. Oh man, the one by Ultra. Yeah, that was.
Yeah, so Joseph Dredz, I saw a fan theory that the chemical spill that blinded Matt Murdock also created the TMNT. Yeah, that was sort of what they were alluding to, but since it wasn't actually Marvel, they can't come out and say it. So it was more just like in the writer's room, they're calling it a parody, but yes, that is effectively what they wanted. They wanted the same chemical spill to have created the Turtles. Yeah, but again, not a Marvel comic, so they couldn't explicitly say so. I'm trying to think of some other indie comics that I loved the Walking Dead comics for a long time, and then they went. By the time the comics went downhill, the show was still good, but since the comics went downhill and I stopped reading them, I knew where the show was going, so I stopped watching the show. Because I was reading the Walking Dead comics years before the show came out.
Okay, yeah, that's something I never got into personally, because I think zombies were overdone and all that, and I was just like, I'll stick to my. And actually, during the '90s, and I feel kind of vindicated, because during the '90s, I sort of ignored Marvel and DC, and I just went after the anime and manga, and I did.
See, I was literally about what you did in the '90s is what I did in the early 2000s. Like from '98 to like 2005, had a subscription to Shonen Jump monthly, and so I didn't read a whole lot of American comics. Because I was reading manga from like '98 to 2005.
Yeah, we did the same thing. It's just like I was just like, oh, American comics, they never show anything violent or anything like that, or they're not as adult that I want to read. And so here you are reading manga, and it's like, oh yeah, this is way better.
and that was the golden age to be reading the monthly Shonen Jump, because it had like Rurouni Kenshin and Dragon Ball and all these great manga all in one place at the same time, because we were getting like the big thick ones that had like, again, that you got in the mail monthly, and there were so many great manga that were going on at that time they'd already been released in Japan, of course, but it was like the first time they were making it stateside in this sort of monthly compilation. So yeah, that's I was fortunate enough to have a dad that was had always been a nerd. He was a nerd in the 70s, the 80s, the whole nine, and so he got me into this stuff at a young age. I mean, I was watching anime when I was like 4 years old and didn't know it was called anime. I just he called it Japanimation, because that's what it was called back in the 80s. So I grew up calling it Japanimation, and I loved a lot of those shows, and it was stuff that there was no peers or friends that I could talk to at my young age about it, because it just hadn't quite hit here in America yet. Like, you had Dragon Ball Z, but that was really about it. But there was so many good anime that I watched at that time that frankly I was probably too young to be watching, but my dad was cool. So
yeah, no, that's pretty awesome how he's like, you just sort of followed in his footsteps. That's awesome.
Right. And man, I'm trying to think of what else I was reading at the time. Like the exception of the rule was Spider-Man. I always kept reading Spider-Man because it was just my absolute hero. And again, I loved the Sonic, and to this day, love the Sonic the Hedgehog comics. Even though they're not as good now that they're under IDW as they were under Archie, I love the Sonic the Hedgehog comics because when something starts off as whether it be a movie or a book or a TV show, and it gets a comic book adaptation, usually there's something lost in translation when it comes to adapting the character. But it was truly they just took the character from the game, moved into the comics, and they gave him more personality. Because back then, video game characters didn't have a lot of personality. It was not like video games nowadays. So they had to more or less create one just based off what they could tell from his animation and movements and you know, Genesis games. And the character they created was just this attitude-filled, like it's just 90s to the nth degree. But then in the early 2000s, those comics just really hit their stride. And I followed them up to their dying days when Archie sold them off or went out of business or whatever happened with Archie. Yeah, if anyone's not read the Archie run of Sonic comics, I cannot tell you how much I recommend them.
Yeah, find them if you guys find them and read them. No, I mean 90s. Yeah, I mean I was just getting started out in the 90s, and at that time, like I said, anime, manga, and just trying to find it. So you go to your local comic shop and it's like maybe they'll have one or two videos of some anime, or you got to go to like a specialty
in
shop
the kids section because it's a cartoon when it was not made for kids. It was these Western video stores did not know what they were doing. I saw my first pair of anime boobies at like 5 years old, and you know couldn't believe it. It was in the kids section at a you know anime at a local video store.
Yeah, or I think there was anime clubs, and they would have like bootleg or recorded VHSs that you could, you know, take home for the night or whatever. And it's like, you know, you're watching stuff and it's all grainy and faded. And
yeah,
because
they were ripped who knows how many times over. And they were like, dude, some people got so into it. They were like self-dubbing it. And, you know, they're like, oh yeah, no, I took Japanese for 3 years in high school. I can translate this. It's super cool stuff. Joseph Dredd says, grew up on Star Blazers, Battle of the Planets, and Robotech. Star Blazers and Robotech are great. I had not watched Battle of the Planets, but I will now need to look into that because I'm a big connoisseur of classic anime. I mean, because we were talking about animation earlier, and anime is the same way. I don't like a lot of modern anime purely for, you know, aesthetic animation reasons. I want to see that grainy, gritty, hand-drawn look to it. I want to see frames that, like, you can see the animation quality drop you know, from one scene to the next because these poor studios of underpaid Asians were, you know, not, you know, just getting rushed to do this work and probably not being paid super well. Like I love that sort of thing.
Yeah. Oh, Battle of the Planets. So that's the American name for it. It's called Science Ninja Team Gatchaman. And it's like a Sentai. So there's lots of, it's like a group of superheroes.
Oh, that's right up my alley.
Oh yeah, you'll love it. They got all sorts of different vehicles. One guy drives a Formula One race car, and oh yeah, it's just
that sounds awesome. No, I remember when I watched years way back in the day. Again, was way too young for it. It was called X, and it was at the time I was probably the bloodiest thing I'd ever seen. X was a lot of fun. You should check out Gatchaman 96. Okay, so that's in that same vein as Battle of the Planets. It's like, is it a continuation, or were you just using the Japanese name there, Joseph?
I haven't seen Gatchaman 96, but it's probably pretty good if it's from the 90s. But yes, Robotech is Macross. I'm a big Macross fan. Like I can go on for days and days.
I didn't know Robotech was someone asked me the other day if I'd seen Macross, and I said no. I didn't realize Robotech and Macross were the same, just with different translations. So whoever I told I hadn't seen Macross, I lied to. Yeah, because I've seen Robotech.
Yeah, so Robotech was made up of 3 different shows: Macross, Southern Cross, and Genesis Clamor Mospeada. They were all mushed together by Carl Masek, and they dubbed it all over and brought it out as Robotech.
Gotcha. Okay, so I guess I haven't technically seen Macross because if it's 3 shows mixed together, I would need to watch each individual show to say I've seen. Okay, good. Maybe I'm not as much of a liar as I thought I am. So.
No. You've seen Macross. It's just been called Robotech. That's all.
Yeah, I know if the other
Star
shows
Blazers
shoved in there were very different, or if it like changes the context or anything.
They probably are, but like I say, they rewrote all of them to fit their script that they were writing. So um, slight, but
It-
the mechas designs are they look similar. They change from robots to vehicles.
Yeah, that's what the Digimon, the theatrical Digimon movie did. I went to see that in theaters, and even as a kid, something didn't feel right because it turns out what it is. There have been 3 theatrical Digimon movies in Japan, and they just spliced all 3 movies together and released it as one movie in America. And so you get like
Oh man.
you get like the first act is just a condensed version of the first movie, second act a condensed version of the second movie, and it does not work. The third act of the Digimon movie in America is awful, but the first act of that movie is really really good. So it's a mixed bag. But yeah, America butchered so much anime in the early 90s and 2000s, but I have a soft spot for it
Oh, I
because
know.
it gave us the anime, like sort of that we have in the West now. I'm not a big fan of a lot of modern anime, but I'm glad that it's at least popular as opposed to when we were younger and there was no viewership for it whatsoever. Like no one knew what
Oh,
Akira was when I
yeah.
was in like second or third grade. I'd seen Akira, I loved it, didn't understand a damn thing about it in second or third grade, but I'd seen it and loved it.
Yeah. No, it they paved the way for what has come, and I like to revisit them. Definitely, and you can ask a lot of the other guys out there, like Brandon, the anime guy, and all that. I was on his show, and we were talking '70s anime and all that, and it's like, yeah, I've seen this one. Yeah, I've seen this one, and it's like, yeah, maybe it's got that '70s aesthetic, but it's still good. It's still
Every
well
time
written.
someone brings up 70s anime, I always tell them watch the anime adaptation of the Americas. In the 70s, Japan went on this like route, this crazy route of adapting Western things into anime. Like there's a 70s anime adaptation of The Wizard of Oz, which is a lot of fun. But there's a 70s anime adaptation of Treasure Island, the old book, and it is without a doubt
Nice.
one of my favorite anime ever. It is my favorite way to experience the story of Treasure Island is the 70s anime. It is so good.
Yeah, and I also did a review on The Little Mermaid. Was done as an anime in the
Really? Oh, that
1970s,
one I didn't know about. I'll have to check
and
that out.
it is not anything like the Disney one. Obviously, they stick right to the Hans Christian Andersen uh, fairy tale, and
Which
yeah,
is
and
funny
her
because
name.
the Disney one was I was watching this interview with the lead character designer. They actually based the art direction off of anime. That's why Ariel's eyes are so big and why she moves the way she does.
Yeah,
They wanted to, so that it's super cool that there's an anime of the Little Mermaid that's nothing like the Disney version, yet the Disney version artistically is based off of anime.
yeah. So definitely try to catch that because it's really good. Her name's not Ariel, it's Marina, and she has a pet dolphin whose name is Fritz.
And
So
instead of a
I mean,
guppy named Flounder, that's cool.
exactly. So I found it very enjoyable.
Yeah, I'll absolutely watch that. But yeah, if anyone's interested in like old 70s anime, yeah, Treasure Island and The Wizard of Oz are a blast. And the anime, it takes anime liberties in both because it's anime, but it's still it's close to the source material as an anime can be, and it tells you the story, but it's based off of the book The Wizard of Oz, not the movie, because the book is very different. Not very different, but notably different. And the anime takes anime liberties with the book source material, The Wizard of Oz, which is a lot. It's a lot of fun. Godzillionaire says just rewatch the whole Yu Yu Hakusho series. Still, yeah, Yu Yu Hakusho is one of the greats. It holds up fantastic. I also recently rewatched it. I rewatched Yu Yu Hakusho every like 3 or 4 years. I've seen that show probably 6 times. And
Nice.
yeah, it holds up great. The third season kind of blows, but it course corrects in the fourth and final season. So
And Whoopa says, I used to think anime was for weirdos. Now I met Pop and I know for sure that it's for weirdos. Thanks, Whoopa.
but no, unfortunately, I do have to bounce. I know, man, I feel like you could go on talking about this forever, but it's my Sunday night because I worked, so I've got to do some
Oh, yeah.
last minute stuff around the house. But we should absolutely do this again. There's I feel like we just scratched the surface, so I will happily do this again. Or again, you thought this was gonna be on my channel. I will happily bring you back on my channel. And we can continue this there. Absolutely. Yeah. My apologies
Yeah.
for the miscommunication
No,
there.
no, that's I'm just such a bonehead. I should have clarified with you, but Hey, no problem. And yeah, we should do this again because I love talking comics, and I hope everyone in the chat loves talking comics and learning. And I hope I was able to teach you a few things of
Dude,
history
you
and
were. I've got
what's
like
come before.
homework
And
now. Yeah, I've got that homework. That's great. And yeah, we were supposed to talk comics, and I didn't even get to didn't get into my favorite comic run of all time, which is Maximum Carnage. So we'll have to talk about that at some point because that
oh,
that comic series is my literally all time favorite comic book run is Maximum Carnage. So yeah,
that's
next time we
awesome.
talk, we'll get into that and we'll talk some more stuff. But man, thanks for Mill for having me on. This has been awesome.
No, it's been fun. And did you have anything that you're working on? You want everybody to know about, like what's coming up for you?
I don't have anything concrete yet. Being a news channel, I do cover nerdy news. I cover nerdy news through a political lens, whether that be about comic books, anime, Magic the Gathering, Disney, the MCU, whatever nerdy news is in the news, both good and bad, because I do like to cover both. I put out 2 videos a day on, as well as some social and culture stuff now and again. Because the news is always changing, you're gonna get 2 videos tomorrow. I don't know what they are yet because it's been my Sunday. I've been busy running errands. I haven't checked the news, but there will be 2 videos tomorrow, and you can sure that if you come to my channel, you'll just get the best of nerdy news through a bit of a cynical political lens, making fun of both sides of the aisle because it is not just one side trying to ruin nerd culture, and politics needs to stay out of nerd culture. So yeah, hop on over to Words of Paradise if you're interested in getting nerd news.
And we sure will. Right on. Thanks, Leon. I appreciate you coming on. And thank you, chat. You guys are great. I hope to see you guys soon so we can do this again. Comics Talk is I'm loving it. This is good stuff.
Yeah, me as well. Thanks to Mill, bud. You have a great rest of your evening. All right.
You too. Right on. Thanks.
Bye.
All right, everybody. I will see you guys in a bit for Trade Stock. That's coming up. So I'm gonna take a bit of a break, but I'll come back and we'll do Trade Stock in at top of the hour. Okay, everyone. See you later.